Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to see some familiar faces, and I'm also very excited to see some new faces here today. So welcome. We absolutely appreciate you sharing your lunch hour to attend this equity in practice session. So thank you for being here. Before I jump into any housekeeping rules, we do have a few. I want to first acknowledge and highlight that the month of April is Arab American Heritage Month. In this month, we want to honor the contributions of the Arab community and also put a spotlight on their rich culture. We hope today's session will play somewhat of a role in doing just that. And so we're very excited about it. So now just for a few housekeeping rules, we're asking for all attendees to remain on mute until the Q&A session, which will be at the end of today's presentation. I also want to make mention that this session will be recorded. You'll see that indicating your top left screen. And if you ever want to reference this presentation or other equity in practice sessions, other resources such as the Social Justice Summit, we have some sessions from the Equity Is podcast. You can always find that content on the DEI YouTube channel. So I'll be sure to share that link today. Please also, when you check out the channel, feel free to share with a friend, a colleague, and also subscribe. So we definitely recognize that this is a lunch hour for many. So in this session, this session also functions as a lunch and learn. So please feel free to enjoy your lunch, whether your camera's off or on. No worries at all. It's a judgment-free zone. So enjoy. So taking a step back, my name is Kyle Tribble. I serve as Director of Culture and Engagement here at the District's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I want to welcome you again to the Equity in Practice series. We don't necessarily want to assume that you're aware of the objective of the Equity in Practice series. So I'll give you a brief overview of our goal with this series. So Equity in Practice series is a collection of community learning opportunities hosted by the School District's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and the Equity Coalition in collaboration, with community-based organizations that are focused on equity, cultural awareness, and social justice. So in this series, community-based organizations will highlight their organization services, their resources. They'll also touch on their equity, their connection with equity, and also lead the school district community with some best practices that promote equitable action. So the goal of this series is to establish a community of learning between the school district community and CBOs throughout the city that promotes collective learning and leads to collective action and equitable change throughout the city of Philadelphia. And whenever we talk about change, we definitely want to start and stay rooted within marginalized communities and marginalized populations. So for today's session, we're excited to welcome Al-Bustan Seeds of Culture. Al-Bustan Seeds of Culture is a community-based organization that presents and teaches on Arab culture through a host of ways, which include the arts, literature, language, and cultural exchange. So in this amazing organization, in this presentation with this amazing organization, please expect to learn a great deal about the Arab culture and the Arab community, and on ways how we can better become allies to the community moving forward. So in delivering today's presentation is Al-Bustan Seeds of Culture's Education Manager, Shema Aid. Shema, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to share this information with us, and I will turn it over to you.
Perfect timing for my child to climb up on my shoulder. Thank you so much all for being here today. It's wonderful to see an incredible response to our outreach efforts and inviting all of you to be here today. My name is Shema Aid, and I'm Al-Bustan's Education Manager. I plan and oversee the variety of educational offerings that we have at the organization. Some of it is like school district partnerships, as well as Arabic courses and trainings for different organizations. I will go over a lot of the programs that we offer, but I'm particularly interested in hearing from folks, at least in the chat, what brings you here today to be in this session. I see a few names who have Arab heritage that I'm assuming of Arab heritage, but the great majority of you are, I'm assuming, are not, and it's wonderful to have a room full of people who are truly interested in learning. So I would like to just know in the chat if you feel comfortable sharing what brings you here today. Penn Alexander in West Philly, that's a few blocks away from us. Any other folks would like to share? Office of Family and Engagement, Welcome Center. Teacher aides. Working with family experiencing homelessness. Supporting families with Arab heritage. Professor. Wonderful. So I'm going to share a screen with you right now with the PowerPoint presentation just so that we get started. And let me know if you can see it. I'm sorry, I might step back for a second just because, sorry about that. I'll share the presentation screenshot, the screen. And I'll step back for a second just to take care of this. I'm really sorry.
For those who have just joined us, I just want to let everyone know that there will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation and a few announcements.
I apologize about all the interruption. And we can just get started right away. I would like to dedicate our session to the Arab and Arab heritage students and families and communities in the school district and beyond, but also to all of our allies who are here with us today and are out there everywhere, recognizing that there is a need for us to work with an underserved and largely misunderstood population. This learning session is an opportunity to celebrate and engage with the families and the students and the community in the school district who are Arab or have Arab heritage, but also with those who have shared experience in the school district, meaning all of the different communities who, by way or another, have some connection to Arab culture, but also people are experiencing immigration and refugee struggles and challenges. We get a lot of requests from school staff and administrators who work with the growing population of Arab heritage communities in the Philadelphia School District about figuring out ways to how to navigate the different challenges, not just in terms of language or limited English proficiency, but also for the cultural uniqueness or sensitivities or particular challenges that the population has. But we also would like to have policy and change makers of all backgrounds be in this discussion and the conversation. And we're so happy that Arab American Heritage Month has been recognized by more institutions and more organizations, including the presidency. And we hope that this effort is an opportunity for us to continue to build together. Al-Bustan has been around for at least 20 years, and it started initially as a summer camp right after 9/11 happened, just to create a space for Arab heritage children to deal with being a visible target, whether in the media or in the community, and not being in a space where they can feel comfortable about who they are. And then the organization developed to do more programs and more work to particularly promote a better and deeper understanding of the Arab culture in general and how diverse Arab culture and Arabs are. The main purpose is to make sure that the community is visible and it has access to being engaged equally like other communities are. And these are some of the current programs that we have, because with the different staff coming in, different types of people coming in with different experiences, Al-Bustan's programs have been different. Also with different waves of migration, different types of Arab populations coming and leaving. Each population comes with different needs. So right now we have a few partnerships with the Free Library of Philadelphia to do bilingual Arabic-English programming. We also work with the Office of Immigrant Affairs to do focus groups with adult Arabic speakers. And we're also involved with national campaigns to push for a designation for Middle East and North African populations, which have been left out of the census for the longest time. In addition, we do direct assistance and referral services, as well as a summer camp that's been going on for 20 years. We have ongoing partnerships with the School District of Philadelphia, where we offer in and after school programs, and we also have adult Arabic language courses. For a lot of professionals and organizations, educators, we can also design and work with you on programs that are particular to your needs and interests. So let's say you want to bring a cultural performance or a presentation on a certain topic, or you want a training for your staff, regardless of their level of interaction with Arab culture and Arab populations. You want curriculum advice or content or material design. These are also services that we can do for different institutions, either the school district or other community-based organizations or other educational or art institutions. So right now I'm going to talk a little bit about who Arabs are and why are we talking about Arab American heritage right now. A lot of this information, not a lot of it ended up being so much research I did on my own that I know is not easily accessible, especially if you're not familiar with the subject. And it confirms that there are limited resources available and accurate information. When I first look up Arabs in Philadelphia, most of what comes off is irrelevant or news about Muslims in Philly, not necessarily Arab communities. So it kind of supports some of the arguments that we're making about how the lack of designation in the census, for example, makes it really hard to find statistics, but also because the community has been largely marginalized, there are not a lot of resources available for them. Some of the stuff you can easily find on Google, but then the context matters, because you can look up Arab world or Arab countries and you can get numbers like that and statistics, and you can find out easily that there are millions of people who live in the Arab world or 5 million people in the United States. But that still kind of feeds into some of the issues of generalization, that people from 22 different countries are similar, or we can generalize what their backgrounds are. And unfortunately, because of the US conflicts, 9/11, the Muslim ban, all of that stuff, Arab communities historically have dealt with being treated with negative stereotypes or complete lack of awareness or knowledge about who these people are, or just overgeneralizations, thinking that if you're an Arab or if you speak Arabic, you're pretty much all the same and you have the same cultural norms and practices. We can say that there are certain practices and certain traditions that you can find across the board, but Arabs, like people of Latin American heritage or people of Asian heritage or any other ethnic groups that we're talking about, are very, very diverse, linguistically, ethnically, spiritually, and in so many ways. Now, coming to what concerns us and what I had very little information available when I did my research. So I relied a lot on my personal experiences and encounters and oral narrations and community work to find some of this information. We know at least that Arabs have been in Pennsylvania and in Philly since the 1800s. And that's something that not a lot of people know. Some of the early communities started in South Philly, and it was largely Syrian, Lebanese, Christian. And then in the past 20 years, because of everything that's been happening, a lot more, there's an influx of Arabic speakers coming into Philadelphia, in the school district in particular. Pennsylvania also has some of the highest growing numbers of Arabs in the entire country. So seeing that the census surveys show that the population, the Arabic speaking population, grew by more than 42% between 2000 and 2015. And we still don't know numbers after the first migration crisis in 2016. Geographically speaking, most of the Arabs in the city or people of Arab heritage are concentrated in some of these places. It's like South Philly, North Philly, Southwest, and Northeast is becoming a hub for a lot of the Arab populations now. And while some have been here for generations, like we said, 3, 4, 5 generations of immigration since the 1800s, so many are newcomers. And those of you who work in the school district are probably seeing more visible Arabs in the newcomer crowd. One thing that happens with these migration waves is the cultural renewal that happens with new people coming fresh from the Middle East or from North Africa, Africa and Asia, who speak Arabic, who still maintain cultural heritage, and they come in here and they bring in a lot of awareness and a lot of understanding of the culture and the language. And this is just a summary for some of my personal finding from my work, knowing that most people probably know about Syrian and Iraqi refugees being resettled by agencies. But from our community work and from working with the schools, some of you might notice that we have a growing number of Algerians and Sudanese and Yemenis. There are also Gulf Arabians from Saudi and Qatar and Emirates who are coming for long-term medical treatment, and they end up in the school system and they end up needing very specific types of services. We're noticing that there's a lot of internal migration, folks coming from New York and New Jersey and settling in Philadelphia because of the US local economy and local influences here in the United States. And also so many people coming on their own, not necessarily through organizations, who probably need a lot more support and don't have designated organizations or designated support out there for them because of who they are. And we're seeing more of these types of Arabs coming to Philadelphia. So to kind of wrap up, it's very important to understand why people come and where they end up. What are their motivations for moving? Some are here because of war or conflict. Some are here for economic reasons. Some are here for medical treatment and will leave again. Some are international students, families. Some are just coming for economic opportunities or other types of opportunities, but aren't necessarily running away from conflict. And it is important to know that we can't treat everybody the same way just because they say, I speak Arabic. And that brings us to a very important piece that we had announced before when we talked about the session, and also folks who work at Office of Family Engagement and other offices in the school district would tell us about these numbers. The first is from the Philadelphia Inquirer about languages spoken at home in general. And Arabic comes right after Spanish and Chinese. When we look at the school district, we know Arabic and Portuguese are on the rise. But the only problem with these statistics with the school district is only if students need English language services, then we know that they are Arabic speakers. But if we have Arab heritage students or families who are enrolled in the school who speak English and have Arab heritage, we have no way of measuring that they are there. It's really hard to find numbers and statistics. And if they speak English and we don't have census categories for Arabs or Middle Easterners or North Africans, then people just get lost in the, and they are categorized as white. which has been always the case, or if they're like dark-skinned Africans, they identify as Black. So we are in a situation where we can't really even be sure about the numbers of Arabs in the school district or Arabs in the city or anywhere really. Another interesting point and a very major point of confusion for a lot of folks is Arab and Muslim, Muslim and Arab, and if they are interchangeable. We know that the Arabic language as a spiritual and cultural vessel is a special language for a lot of folks who aren't necessarily of Arab heritage. I'm giving a few examples here in Philly from my experience in interacting with African-American Muslims and how they use Arabic. Some of them use Arabic even in their slang or have Arabic names. We also have West Africans, South Asians, like Pakistanis, Indians, Bangladeshis, and a growing Central Asian population that also honors and learns Arabic or utilizes it in different ways. So we want to make sure that there are places where people intersect and connect over the language or religion, but there are also places where they are very different. Historically, Philly's Arab population was largely Catholic Christian. And that is, you know, right now with the different migration waves, we have more Muslim Arabs coming. So just keeping in mind that, you know, there is a lot of cross paths and intersections, but also a lot of uniqueness and differences among people. And that brings us to the idea of like Arabs being people who have been here for a very long time, even before the independence of the United States, and yet how until the 1960s, there wasn't even a designation or an idea that that group of people even existed. But yet, as a result of who they are or how they are perceived, people face a lot of challenges because of their identities and their perceived identities. So on one way, you are very visible if you have certain features or your clothes, how you speak, but also there's a lot of lack of visibility in terms of what's out there, programs, representation, culturally competent and culturally sensitive material and programming for people who come from these particular cultural heritage or backgrounds. There's also the major security and threat-based approach that has been the US, unfortunately, the US government's involvement in Arab countries and in the Middle East, with the most recent thing being the Muslim ban, and all the countries on that list of people who are banned from coming to the US being Arab countries or members of the Arab League pretty much, and then the 9/11 effect that continues to linger. As a result, Arabs as individuals and as communities are anxious and sometimes afraid of involvement, or they overthink what would be a consequence of them being really visible. And we can see that playing out in schools and in the school setting in so many ways, which I think would be relevant to a lot of folks today. In terms of content, curriculum, knowledge, and awareness of Arabs and Arab culture, all of the research and surveys show that there's very little that's taught about the Arabic-speaking world when we look at American curriculums and textbooks. And if any is mentioned, I'm Egyptian, so I'm really sensitive about that. I always just see images and scenes of ancient history and very little to almost nothing about how's it like to be an Egyptian today? How is life today in the Arab world? How does Cairo look like? How do all of these like Arab capitals that have been around for thousands of years look like right now? How do people live there? It's very little that's shared in the school and educational settings about how the Arab world today is like. And then when we come to programming, if we're thinking about English as a second language or culture clubs or any workshops of that sort, or for students or for families. Also, we go back to the question of the census, the designation, people being invisible, being a minority that isn't very familiar to a lot of institutional programs. A lot of the programs just rely on just translating or interpreting incisions for content that is shared across the board. And we know that it is a continuous challenge if we have a school district like ours with hundreds of languages spoken, people from so many different countries. How can we accommodate everybody? But we're trying to think about the best case scenario. When we talk about the students themselves, a lot of the kids in the schools are confused or have lack of awareness about who they are, especially if they don't get that support from home or they don't have resources in their families. And if they don't see their culture or countries or language used or represented or celebrated, it furthers an urge for them to just want to assimilate and disappear or just doubt themselves. We also know about a lot of bullying and harassment that happens just because of, again, like so many other ethnic and linguistic groups. Could be like students could be bullied based on how they look like, how they speak, their accents, their names. For if somebody is, let's say, Arab and Muslim and wears a scarf and dark-skinned, or is limited English proficiency. So there's so many combining factors that could lead to further victimization among Arab heritage students. And then it's important that we also think of them as third culture kids who are navigating multiple difficult questions that are, too much for their age and where they are. And so it's important that we think about offering support for their particular cultural experience. That could play out in, again, confusion about my identity, who am I and where do I belong? Lack of representation leads to all types of negative feelings, and then juggling multiple realities. I want to make sure I do well at school, but my home environment is completely different. My family might still be connected to issues and struggles that are happening in another country that I might not even know too much about. So that's a lot of the invisible things that the kids might be dealing with. How does that play with the parents and caregivers? Folks probably noticed that it's mostly mothers are caregivers, sometimes grandmothers, sometimes fathers, because of the gender rules in the Arab community, and also how a lot of the times fathers are out there working a lot and then mothers end up carrying the entire responsibility and school falls on them. If they are limited English proficiency or they want particular things because of who they are, they might struggle to access the services. And we hear a lot about people wanting to be more involved in their children's learning, but they just don't know. They don't have the skills. They don't have the tools. Some of them would want to remain as invisible as possible just for protection. And they might feel like, oh, this is not for me. I don't need to be involved with this stuff. Why would I attend a workshop? And then we can also see generational gaps developing with kids speaking English only and parents never learning English. And you probably see that in a lot of other communities as well. Another important factor is Al-Bustan is probably one of very few, if not any other organizations that do programming specific to Arabic culture. And so a lot of the parents don't have resources and enough institutional support to pass on their own heritage and language to their kids. Good news is we're seeing a lot of development. Us working with the school district and seeing so many community organizations and institutions like the Free Library and other initiatives pushing for multilingual education and recognizing of multiculturalism has been incredible. And these are just a few ideas I thought I could throw out there for folks, but I would like to also see your thoughts in the chat if you wanted to share. We can always ask folks how they identify, or, like ask family members, ask the children, and not assume anything. One of the things that happen is with ethnic minorities in the Middle East, for example, or ethnic non-Arabic speaking minorities who don't identify as Arab, or, there could be so many other possibilities. So just check in with people and know how they would like to identify themselves and what are they interested in. You can talk with trusted cultural messengers or folks who do that work. You can reach out to us and connect and ask us. We can refer you to other organizations and resources as well. Understand that the invisible struggles, like what we shared, do interfere, as you may as well know, because of the nature of your work, if you work with the school district, and collaborate with families as much as possible on the best way that they want support. Also think about creating and fostering opportunities where children's cultural heritage is celebrated. It's wonderful that we have Arab Heritage Month and Hispanic Heritage Month, a Black History Month, and all of these wonderful occasions, but we can always continue to integrate cultural heritage into the programming and the classes and the coursework that we have. If you have any thoughts, I would be more than happy to see some of your thoughts in the chat. Also, any reflections or thoughts? I know this was tons of information and a lot of stuff. It took me so much to put this together, and I know it's a lot to digest. So you can always go back to it another time and think about it and reflect, but we would be happy to hear your feedback. So cultural exchange that Arab families are learning about Philadelphia and our culture and vice versa. Asking trusted messengers, cultural messengers for children book recommendations, hosting affinity groups for families, include a category for Arabic families. Wonderful. Create an open space to feel proud of their heritage. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I love that. Yes, understanding that invisible struggles exist is important. Yes, absolutely. Yes. For the question about what support is provided to LGBT plus Arab students and their parents, we don't necessarily have specific programs that are targeting Arab students and their families who are dealing or like who identify as LGBT plus. Our programs are pretty much general, but people can reach out to us and we can refer them to organizations or services that could be of support. But we do work with artists and educators of all variety of backgrounds. So representation at least, and having that available, like representing the different variations of Arab culture, is a way of support. Schools should consider having more resources and spaces for Arabic students and staff, and not just during their cultural celebrations. 100%. Okay, you can keep those going. Yes. Understanding that you can be Black and Arab, Christian and Arab. Arab is a culture and ethnicity and not just made of Islamic followers. True. Yes, and we would love to get more stakeholders and policymakers involved in these efforts and make sure that these messages are made available for them. Thank you all. Keep them coming. We're going to just go over a few resources. Now, you can look things up, right? But finding appropriate and relevant resources, especially with a topic that has a lot of confusion around it, can be really hard, and we recognize that. So today I'm just going to show a few samples of resources, and after we follow up with you, if anybody's interested in resources, you should let us know and let the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion know that you're interested in resources. Al-Bustan also has done a lot of legacy projects where we have resources on our website that could be used for educational purposes to learn and integrate Arab cultural understanding in your school programming. I also wanted to highlight some of the wonderful efforts by some Arab American educators who did work with PBS education, for example, and people who make resources available online. It isn't necessarily, it doesn't have to be like Philadelphia specific, because like I said, we have limited resources on that. But just integrating and utilizing and consulting with Arab heritage educators would be very helpful. There's so many organizations that put together guides, for example, or lesson plans, the Arab National American Museum being one. So many of the other national Arab organizations put together a lot of really nice guides and resources. But also think about exploring different extracurricular stuff like podcasts or articles or blogs that are written by educators or people of Arab heritage. This is something that I picked up that came out. And there were 2 educators that I follow who put it together, and I thought it was really nice and helpful. So I could also share some of these links. And as always, us being a local Arab organization here, we're more than happy for folks to get involved in whichever way they want. We have volunteer opportunities. We do a lot of programming, and people are more than welcome to show up and attend and get involved with the sessions that we host. You don't have to be necessarily a target audience. Like if we have a bilingual Arabic English story time, it doesn't have to be just for families with children. But we also have students come and observe, and educators, because it's a curriculum offering of some sort, right? It could be beneficial for you when you're planning your next engagement. So just get in touch with us and let us know, and we'd be more than happy to collaborate with you in that regard. And thank you so much for being here today and for listening. And I really appreciate that opportunity. And now we can open for Q&A, if that's okay with folks.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Shema. We definitely appreciate this amazing presentation. Everyone feel free, if you have a question, you could just come off mute and ask your question.
Hi. Hi, Shema. Thank you so much for this beautiful presentation. That was like really informative. So for me, I'm an Arab that is new to the city, and I'm getting to know more about the Arab Americans here, which is very interesting to me. My question is, because you talked a bit like how some parents are still dealing with some of the struggle, you know, back to their home country. So I'm wondering if you can just like talk a little bit about how people like view politics, or like, do the Arabs feel like it's too much to talk about politics, or like what is the best approach, maybe like kind of like to make such kind of like a conversation more informative rather than, you know, traumatizing or something. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yaqeen, for this. I feel like one of the challenges that, as somebody who is a community organizer, but also an Arab immigrant and educator, I run into having to be of different identities depending on the space I enter. And a lot of times with immigrants coming here, they assume that they have to just not talk about why they came and where they come from, just to protect themselves first off, but also because there aren't a lot of spaces where this conversation can happen in a safe way. I unfortunately also noticed that a lot of institutions avoid that question altogether, either for fearing complicating things or re-traumatizing, or because they might not have the knowledge or resources. So I feel like there's so many parts that everybody should play. We need to think about trauma-informed approaches in education and community engagement, where we want these folks who are running away from places where they still have to deal with trauma because of what's happening back home to know that it's okay to share sometimes, and that there are spaces where your story and where you come from and what you bring in and what you deal with is relevant. I feel like I don't see that a lot, unfortunately. And we try to create through art experiences or classroom sessions or, integrating, things in lesson plans and stuff here and there. But I feel like we could also use more institutional support in making sure that folks and their backgrounds and their struggles and their internal invisible struggles are honored and recognized by those who interact with them closely, particularly in school spaces. And I know this can be a really tough, line to maintain, but just from having Arabic speakers focus group and just seeing how much people pour out that they've been holding in, I feel like people are in a place where they want that to be honored. I hope that answered your question.
I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead, Victoria. You can come off mute.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much, Yama, for this amazing presentation. I think this is really important as we move into an even more integrated society in this city. This city has always been like a melting pot, pretty much since day one. This is historically a city of people from all over the world, right? And so I felt like we have an obligation to be the city of brotherly love and be welcoming to everyone. And so I thank you for enlightening us with this work and with the different things you're doing in the city. My question to you is, I'm always looking at ways to grow and educate one another in a way that we are all like there's a reciprocation, right? And so when so many of our families come to Philadelphia, right, we want to make sure that we're supporting them, respecting them, honoring their culture, that this is a very new environment. They're starting from scratch, not knowing where to go, what to do. And that is its own struggle, right? And I think it's hard for some of us who are native Philadelphians, native, to the city, to the state. We don't always see that part, but I think there's the other side of too, not bringing people in and showing them what Philadelphia is all about, what we are as a culture, because we do have our own culture. We do have our own way of doing things. How can we have that cultural exchange, kind of like what I was talking about earlier? And I think a lot of it is because people have very preconceived notions about what it means to be Arab. Most people feel it's specifically, Islamic, that when an Arabic person says, or an Arab person says dark skin, they're not necessarily thinking, Black, dark skin, they're thinking brown. So people have these certain connotations about what it means to be Arab and, only Muslim, not realizing that there are people who are of the Hebrew faith, people who are Christian, people who are Buddhist, and they do coexist in the Middle East very peacefully with their Islamic brothers and sisters. So I guess my question is more so, how can we make people, more aware of the diversity within the Arab community itself? And how can we also work with the Arab community to I don't like the word assimilate, because that feels like you have to give up a part of who you are in order to fit in, but integrate into our community and be a part of our Philadelphia culture and really feel like they are, contributing in that way. Like, how can we move that along?
Wow, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for bringing that out here. I feel like there is a reason why people choose coming to Philly and why we have a growing Arab and immigrant population in the city. And I know just from interacting with folks, they do feel that the city is welcoming. But I again, like you're saying, there is a lack of understanding for a lot of Arab communities are very culturally and linguistically isolated. And a lot of them rely on that. They just continue to work and live around their own folks, just like some, other communities do. And they don't integrate fully into the city. One of the efforts that I've been seeing is like equitable engagement efforts with the city of Philadelphia, like some of the focus groups that we're doing, where we bring folks from the city of Philadelphia and have them sit down with the population. I know that there are some organic interactions where folks from Philadelphia who are native to the city are coming to faith-based organizations and spaces where they mix with people of different ethnicities. So I feel like it could be something that the school district, as a place, as one of the most diverse institutions in the city, would think about hosting spaces and opportunities where that cultural exchange happen. One of the things I noticed personally from working in resettlement and working with the process of bringing people in here and having them resettled, there's a lot of separation between folks who are resettled and folks who are from the city. Unfortunately, also, because of the news and coverage and how Philadelphia is talked about, people just come with preconceived ideas that we just have to stay away from everything. I'm a big Philly person, and I try in like my personal efforts to talk with folks in person about what Philly is and what is it about, who are the people there, why we shouldn't have preconceived ideas. But I feel like it would be wonderful to think about cultural exchange sittings where, hey, we're going to bring a bunch of folks from here who could teach you ESL, for example, or involve community members from Philadelphia in some of the programs that immigrants are doing. With ESL, for example, I always thought it would be wonderful to have Philly folks leading some of the classes or coming as volunteers, or like just sharing about what Philly is, organizing tours for historic sites or neighborhoods and things like that, where people get to see what Philly is truly about. But I can also tell you that Arab populations are really hard to engage just because of everything I shared. I think we've made some successes recently, just in the past year or so after COVID, with people having an urge for wanting to be involved. But there's still a lot of doubts and confusion and fear and lack of interest in engaging even with us. So I can tell you it's work in progress, but it would be very helpful to join efforts with the school district and other institutions to create and think about possible spaces like that.
I really thank you for that. That's really amazing. And I really hope that we as a school district can support that, because I honestly think at the end of the day, I think before we can do any of these things, we really have to get to a deep root of understanding of why we all have these preconceived notions about one another, because a lot of it is tied into history, African-American history, how African-American Muslims feel that they're treated by people who are Arab and Muslim, and how Arab, Muslims feel that they're treated by African-American Muslims, and all of these different things. There are just so many barriers, and we have to be able to break those barriers before we can really successfully move forward.
Yeah, and I honestly can tell you from my personal experience moving into Philadelphia and just wanting to explore the different mosques that are out there, and how Philly has some of the largest concentrations of Muslim populations in the entire continent that is historically African-American. And how for a while there was a space where people were working together and connecting in the 70s and 60s around the civil rights movement. And then 9/11 happened, and then different migration waves happened. And then for some reason, there's a lot of tension that is arising. And so I feel like recognizing that that is out there and being honest and frank about each of our communities' preconceived ideas and attitudes and the trauma that's out there, coming to an agreement that we can all come at the table and recognize what is actually happening instead of just brushing it off. So I am with you 100%. And I would love to see more folks being advocates in their own communities about reconciliation, because we need that.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the amazing questions. And I also want to send a special thank you to Shema and Al-Bustan Seeds of Culture. Thank you so much for your time today in this amazing session. We are very grateful for this, like the insight and for the presentation. So thank you so much. Before we depart, I know we only have a few minutes, but I wanted to touch on, and I know that the topic of language has come up throughout the presentation and throughout this session. So I wanted to ensure that our colleague Michelle from the FACE office has the opportunity to share some of the school district's information resources for those who are in attendance, especially for school district staff, both central office and school-based, and educators. So I will hand the mic to Michelle if you're still there.
Yes, I am here. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Shima, for the presentation. As everybody has said, it's very informative. The picture that you showed in one of the cultural performances at the mayor's office, I was actually there, I witnessed it. It was amazing. I took a video of it, showed my kids. It's just absolutely blew our mind. Amazing culture. And thank you, Kyle, for this opportunity. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michelle Quach. I am the program manager for translation and interpretation at the school district. I oversee all of the translation and interpretation work for the school district. One part of my work is to do BCA hiring and BCA professional development. And I will definitely be reaching out to Shima, Al-Bustan to see how we could collaborate further, and other organizations as well. If you are part of an organization that does work in different cultures, I'm very interested to see find ways how we could collaborate. And if there's ever any questions, any concerns about language access for the school district, please email me directly. I'm going to put my email in the chat. Right now we are hiring for BCAs. We're trying to get some more BCAs in for this school year because the deadline for hiring school-based staff is May 1st. We are still interviewing and hiring some folks for Spanish, but we need other languages as well. So if you have any candidates that might be interested in the BCA position, please reach out to me directly as well. And yeah, that's about all the announcements that I have, Kyle.
Thank you so much for that, Michelle. Definitely appreciate it. Thank you again, everyone, for taking your time out today. We'll be sure to stay in contact around our next session next month. Once again, thank you again to Shima and Al-Bustan Seeds of Culture. I hope you all have a great day. Thanks again.
Thank you all.
Take care, everyone.